Hey guys, Chris, Alpaca. We're back with a hopefully much shorter hit record video. The last one got a little out of control, going super deep into the plugin alliance SSL 6000E or 4000E, excuse me, channel strip. I'm a little sorry, but I'm not that sorry because it's super cool. I use it all the time, and I hope you guys got a little bit out of that. I know I did. I learned some stuff that I didn't even know I didn't know. So yeah, cool. Before we get too far along, I want to say a huge thank you to Rode microphones. They make this little gadget right here that lets you plug a regular lavalier mic, which I don't know if you can see, but that's what I'm using for this, into a regular XLR output, which is super handy. I wanted to use a lav for this. I had shotgun mics set up before. All this huge pain in the butt. I didn't want to use wireless lavs because then you're plowing through batteries all day long. So this was a great solution. So I ordered one, and it turned out to be a total dud. It didn't work at all. Sent them an email, and they had a new one in my hands in, I don't know, less than a week. So that was super cool of them. Didn't even make me send the old one back or give them a receipt or anything. So thank you so much for those guys. That was super cool. Now everything sounds good, looks good. Well, I don't know about looks good, but sounds good, and it makes it super convenient. Anyway, yeah, so here we go. Today, I want to talk a little bit about setting up a mix that comes in from somebody else. We're not going to get into every single detail because that would just be excruciating, but I'll do a bunch of shorter videos on different little aspects of it. So this is a session I got from a friend of mine, Taylor Bullock. He's in this cool experimental electronic project called Pressure Kitten. I've actually played on a few of his records. Yeah, he was kind enough to let us show off his noise. We're really not going to listen to a ton today. It's not too much about tone. It's more about workflow for me. So this is how I usually get started with something like this. As you can see, there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of unlabeled stuff, which I'm trying to get him better about that. But it's been a journey, and a bunch of like routing stuff. I got mix master like 0.1, which means there's a duplicate of the original one. Basically, I don't know what's going on in this session, and a lot of times you want to start from scratch. A lot of times you want to start where the original artist left off. Sometimes neither of those things are possible. I know the both. I've said a lot of times twice for both situations, but trust me, once you get deeper into working on music and not dealing with, but working with creatives and trying to figure their vision out, a lot of times is always a lot of times. So I know Taylor really well. We actually met doing music, and now we're very good friends. I was actually at his wedding, which was super cool. So I know, because I know the artist, and this is another thing that you need to keep into account when you're working with people, is to get to know them a little bit. Kind of try to figure out where their vision is, figure out where their insecurities are, figure out what they're going for. I'm lucky because I know Taylor well, and I know he just wants me to go frickin' crazy. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get rid of everything that he had. I'm gonna get rid of all his routing and busing and kind of set it up the way that I like to work. So we're just gonna find a clean slate for ourselves. So first thing I'm gonna do is go down to all these plugins and just get rid of them. I do have a reference mix down here, so I can always go back to that if I need to find a sound that he's not into, but I really don't think that's going to happen. I'm pretty familiar with what he likes to do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to Windows machine, I'm going to hit Alt, and then go on my first plugin and go No Insert. And now what that's going to do is just take the plugin off the second slot in each one of these channels, right? And do the same thing with the first slot, Alt, No Insert. I don't know if there's a faster way to do this or not. There might be, but I'm not aware of it. I'm going to take all this stuff off. I'm going to just get rid of it all. And then I'm actually going to hit Alt again, because what Alt does is give, it does whatever you're doing to every single track. So I'm going to get rid of this, whatever. I don't even know what that is. I don't care. It's not important right now. So now we got no plugins, no sends, no nothing. I have a delay aux track. I'm going to get rid of that. I've got a mix master. I'm actually going to keep this because I'm going to need it. And it's an aux input, and volume -9 tells me that it's probably pretty hot coming in. So after that, I'm going to clear all the inputs and outputs because I use some outboard gear occasionally. I don't know if I'm going to use it on this or not. Again, Alt, no input. But I want to keep my options open, and if Pro Tools thinks the input's being used for something else, it won't let you put whatever your routing is for your outboard gear. If you guys want to hear about that, we can talk about it later. Then go back to the volume, just put everything at 0, 0, 0, Alt, 0, go to 0. So it's all in one place. Now, the next thing is, even though you changed your routing and got rid of some busing and stuff, it's still sitting here in your IOs, which is kind of a pain. Sometimes for me, it's really distracting. And again, I'm starting from scratch. I know my setup. I have 32 ins, 32 outs, and I usually only use between 24 and 48 buses in the first place. So I'm going to be brave and do Control A. There we go. Control A. And delete everything. See? How brave am I? And then just do default all buses. Cool. All right, so now I got my 32 IO. All my buses are just called bus. I like to start this way because, especially if I'm building a new project, I kind of want to take it step by step. I have a few templates for different things, but this is kind of the whole idea is let's start from scratch and see where we can go. So now we're at 0. We don't have any like master.1, master2 copy, all that kind of crap. We don't need any of that. Then the output, my default output bus is going to be 2324. Because that's kind of what I use. We're going to do audition path 2324. That's just how I have it routed in the console. So anyway, okay. Now next thing, mix master. This is the brains of the operation. Solo saved because he was being responsible about something. And then we're going to go output, but we're not going to output to an actual analog output so we can monitor it. We're actually going to send it to... Actually, let's do this. Let's create 2 new tracks. Control Shift N. We're going to go stereo aux input, and we're going to name it, well, we don't need to name it because we're going to name it later. Sweet. Nope, I messed up. Let's create another one. Aux input. Cool. All right, so now we got our two extra tracks. These guys are really going to be what we're going to be monitoring through. Now, one is going to be called the print bus. And I like to label all of my auxes in all caps. Just for me, it's just easier to maneuver, and it's quicker to see what you're looking at, especially if you have a billion tracks going on. And like I said, 2324 is my output where I'm listening. And then the heater is on a separate set of outputs on the console. And I'll explain what these guys do here in a second. So we're going to go back to our mix master, because this is where all the audio is going to come through in the whole song. Just stereo aux, very humble stereo aux. And we're going to go output to a track, print bus, boom. And since, again, Windows machine, I'm going to hit Windows key and click this so I can route it to multiple buses. When you see the little plus sign, that means it's going to more than one place. The Windows key is really handy if you want to route pretty much anything to more than one output. And it's different on Macs, and I know that. But we're on a PC, so I'm going to talk about what I know. So yeah, see the little check mark, print bus, boom, the heater, boom. Whatever goes through here is going to go through both of these guys. You definitely want to solo safe these so that when you're muting and soloing stuff, this isn't the problem. And then I like to just make them a different color. Like some people like them to be green because that's how you get paid, whatever. Anyway, so the difference between all of these things is this is basically where all of your audio is going to come through and then spits out to these two guys. The print bus really doesn't get messed with a whole lot, but the heater, on the other hand, is supposed to give you closer to what a master-sounding album would sound like. I even have a preset called Rough Mix Master on here for this very reason. So that way, you're doing most of your listening on this guy, 23 and 24, but you can zip over to the heater to get it, listen to it a little bit closer to what a master would sound like. I know guys who have their whole mastering chain set up on here. And the reason we do that will be clear hopefully soon. We'll see. But yeah, so you can kind of just listen to what you're doing on both, make sure what you're doing translates, and that's a super handy little trick that I totally stole from Vance Powell. Thanks, Vance. You're the man. He's a freaking genius. I'm not being sarcastic. So anyway, the other thing I want to do in the Mixmaster is add the trim plugin. Because from what I remember of Taylor, this is all going to come in super hot. And this guy is going to be our first line of defense against, clipping, overloading, especially when it comes to putting it into a YouTube stream for you guys. It might blow our faces off. We don't want that. The only other thing that I'm going to do is send the print bus, actually, I'll send the mix master to another set of outputs so that it can go to the stream because I have another little system set up for that. Okay, cool. So now just to get our bearings, we've got everything with nothing, which is kind of nice. And then we've got our masters, which should work just fine. So I know that his stuff is going to be super, super drum heavy. So I'm going to grab kick and snare and just create a drum bus for them. So that's going to be highlight, shift alt. Shift alt does whatever you do to whatever is highlighted. And we're just going to go new track. And again, I like my stuff in all uppercase. Drums, easy peasy. And now what you got to remember on an aux like this, because we're basically using this to control eventually once we get all the routing and figure out what stuff is, because like audio 1, audio 2, like sometimes stuff is labeled so weird, you just got to listen to it before you can figure it out. This is solo safe it, so whatever comes through here is not going to, when you solo the kick drum and it mutes and you go, I soloed it, why did it mute? Usually this is why. And then I like my drums to be pink because it drives Dean Andrews Jr. crazy. And the other thing to remember is you're not using an analog output. Everything goes through the mix master. Like sometimes there'll be an instrument bus too, but we can make that decision later. So basically, you should hear, yeah, there we go. Little kick and snare. Very electronic-y, very experimental. Maybe our trim guy is a little bit too low. Actually, you know what? I'll just crank it up on the, so we can hear better on the little mixer. Cool. Yep. So anyway, that's that. That's how that works. This busing can be a little confusing at first. I know it took me a while to kind of get it figured out, but it works really well. And I can show you the difference what the heater's doing if you want to check it out. We'll just disable this. See, it's a lot perceptibly louder, you know, just closer to a master. We're not even really doing much to it, but you can see the gain difference with the L2. L2 is probably about as close as I get to professional mastering as possible. So yeah, okay, so we got kick, snare, blah, 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 through the drum bus, which is cool because you control your drums together, both in processing and also volume there. And basically the same process is going to apply to all this other stuff. Let me see if I have any more stuff that needs to be drums. I think this is drums. Let's find out. This is tedious, and you guys will find better ways and quicker ways to do this. But you know, kind of when you're going through tracks that you don't know, there we go. Cool, that belongs to drums. So again, put in drums. And the auxes, please remember, aren't the same as grouping. Grouping's down here, and that's a whole other ball of wax. Another quicker way, really, to experiment with all your stuff, all your files and tracks, is just to send everything to the mix master at first. And that way you can kind of organize stuff a little quicker. You don't have to unroute it and route it and stuff like that. Now I am going to add an instrument bus for a couple of reasons. Vocals, so many vocals. Stereo. Instrument bus. That way it'll be easier to separate my instruments from my vocals, because inevitably you get to that point where you need to kind of carve out some room for the vocals. I don't really have a specific color for this, or maybe add some processing on the whole thing. It's all good. It's all rock and roll. So we're going to send all those to the, again, I'm Shift Alt to the instrument bus. Oop, there it is, boom. And then you're going to send your drums to the instrument bus as well, or maybe not. It's totally up to you. It can be handy to have them separate if you're doing stems, because you can just print the drum bus and the instrument bus and the vocal bus at the same time. It kind of saves some time. So you know what, I'm not even going to leave it at the mix master for now. So yeah, it's just a how to set up a mix and not be stuck with somebody else's leftovers, which is sometimes kind of cool, but most of the time you're just scratching your head going, what is supposed to be going on here? Oh, and one other quick thing. So a lot of times when stuff comes out of samplers or whatever, because this came out of Reason, so we have stereo kick, right? But it's really not stereo. It's the same thing. It just got printed in stereo. So, and the same thing with the snare drum, because we can make a fake stereo if we want to. I guess it's a little bit panned over, but I don't want my snare panned over. I want it dead center. So another really cool function is the split into mono. It maintains everything, and then I'll just delete, the stereo one and one of the extra mono ones, because it keeps it a little bit. To me, it keeps it more organized. I come from a analog drum background, so where's my split into mono button? Come on, guys. Split into mono. There we go. So I want to see a mono snare, and I can make it stereo later. We have so many cool plugins to do that with, and it's really pretty much the same. Just make sure I've gotten caught on that before. It's still pan center, and I don't really hear an appreciable difference. Just rename it to, kick, and then snare. And the other thing is, like, if you want to use any analog outboard processing, like, let's just use this for example. I don't even know if it's going to sound good or not. It's from another project. It's definitely brighter. If you process it in stereo, you have to have a stereo whole set of outboard gear, and this is like, I think this plugin is like an 1170s, not plugin. This analog chain is like an 1176, a Pultec, and a couple EQs or one EQ. I'm not sure, but either way, I don't have two of each one of those things. And if I did, I couldn't use it on any other tracks, not in real time anyway. You could always commit it. So yeah, that's another thing to keep an eye on when stuff comes in from anywhere, really, is just the organization. A lot of times is what takes so much time in the mix, which can be just incredibly tedious, and it really kind of slows you down. So the quicker this becomes second nature, the better off usually you are. Like, you can even look at the bass too. It's really just dead center. And bass instruments, by their very nature, are hard to distinguish when they're panning left and right, especially on like consumer systems. I mean, you can do it with if you're mixing in THX for theaters and stuff, but bass tends to be omnidirectional. So, having two of them in stereo usually is just distracting, or it'll create this weird wobbly stereo image that kind of doesn't really make sense. So anyway, that's a quick thing about bussing and setting up a mix. And obviously this is a lot more work to do in this one, but thanks for watching me and hanging in there. And I think this is probably the most important takeaway, to be honest. And you don't have to worry about those in real life. They're that's just for this. Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you have a great day. Again, thank you, Rode. You guys are great. And I really like the classic one, so make that one again. That's cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.